Holly. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Toolbox Tuesday. So happy to have you here today. My gosh, we're going to drop some knowledge on you regarding our brand new PCI program that we're going to be launching very, very soon. So today is a sneak peek as far as that goes. But before we jump into today's topic, you know what we got to do? We got to talk about some upcoming webinars happening this month. Heck yeah, you ready for it? Cool. Let's talk about it. So next week on Tuesday, July 21st, we're going to be hosting a Toolbox Tuesday session called How to Build Your Square Demo Account. Now, for the most part, these past couple of months, we've been telling you, you got to build a Square demo account. You're like, whoa, man, okay, we'll get it done. Now that you've got that Square demo account set up, we're going to show you how to set it up properly so you can walk into any business on Main Street and go, hey, you and I need to have a conversation in regards to your current technology. Make sure you join us for that one next week on Tuesday, July 21st, and next week on Thursday, not Tuesday, Thursday. What? One more time. Next week on Thursday, July 23rd, we're going to be doing yet another Square Boot Camp. During that session, we're going to be talking about how every single business that you encounter is actually a hybrid. You didn't know that, did you? You're going to find out more next week on Thursday. With that session on Thursday, please note you are going to have to register for that. Look for emails being sent out very, very soon so that you can register for that Square Bootcamp happening next week on Thursday, July 23rd. And finally, we're going to wrap up the month of July on July 28th. That's our final Toolbox Tuesday for the month. We're going to do an overview of the Navigo portal. Now, Navigo, you thinking, hey, Scott, I go in there, I fill out my applications and stuff. That's all it does. To which I say to you, au contraire, which is French for on the contrary. You're welcome. There's a lot of stuff in Navigo that you probably missed. And I'm going to tell you right now, our team has been actively working to make Navigo even better for you. So we're going to show you some of those things that you're probably not taking advantage of for your productivity. As always, if you don't see any of the Toolbox Tuesdays invites on your calendar, good Lord, just reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you out. Send an email to sales@paycompass.com. One more time, with feeling, sales@paycompass.com. We'll make sure we get those invites onto your calendar. Regarding Square Bootcamp next week on the 23rd, we're going to tell you to watch out for an email so that you can register in advance and make sure you join us for that session. Phew, that was a lot of stuff. As always, Toolbox Tuesday, we are recording today's session. It will go live on our YouTube channel probably in about 24 hours or so. But if you're the type of sales agent that likes to use an AI note taker, go ahead, get it launched. We don't mind. Go ahead and just do what you got to do so you can have a transcript at the end of today's session. Let's get this kicked off. Good Lord, Scott, you talk so much. It's August. What the heck? It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host. He looks like he's twinning today with me. Ladies and gentlemen, give some love to John Marshall. Hey, John.
Good afternoon, Scott. And I have to just tee this up for you. Last week, you and I were speaking and laughing between each other that we were actually getting excited about the PCI topic. This is unheard of. You guys are going to be in for a treat with all that Mark is going to deliver today.
Yeah, I got it. And John is 100% correct on this one. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce our guest panelist. And believe it or not, this is being recorded for posterity. I'm going to come right out and say it out loud. Ladies and gentlemen, John and I nerded out last week because we actually got excited about PCI. And I know what you're thinking. Scott, nobody gets excited about PCI. But today, you will, I promise you. Ladies and gentlemen, give some love to our guest panelist, Mr. Mark Hayward. Mark, let's hear your voice, my man.
Hey, guys. So happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to Toolbox Tuesday.
Yeah, excellent, Mark. We're so happy to have you here today. John and I had the pleasure of meeting you earlier this year in Boston where we were hanging out at NEAA. We're at the trade show and got to hang out with you a little bit. And Mark, I got to tell you right now, just right out of the gate, all I want to do is just get it right out there. Why it's so cool. Oh my gosh, you guys have got to, but we got to back it up a little bit. John and I need to switch to decaf maybe. But let's dive in with the first question, Mark. So right out of the gate, PCI compliance. Let's just kind of get it defined. What is PCI compliance? But the second follow-up question to that is, Mark, why are so many people like PCI compliant? Do I have to like? So let's get it defined. What is it? Why do they have to have it? And why is there so much disenchantment? And what are you going to do to just kind of change the script on that, my friend?
Yeah, well,
Mark,
thanks, Scott. And
Mark, if I may, is your
yeah,
camera closed? We don't see you.
we were
Yeah,
trying to get it
which I'm,
working beforehand, and it just won't work.
Okay,
And it's
never
probably
mind that.
yeah,
because,
Just
yeah,
wanted to make sure. Perfect.
no,
yeah. And
he,
and guys, Scott, John, again, thanks for having me today. Yeah, we did spend time at NEAA. I think we shared a love of old fashions at the time.
we,
So it was, yes. But
so,
other than that, I'll try to be as brief as I can. But of course, like you guys nerded out last week, I could talk about PCI all the time. I'm not, I don't regret about PCI. It is something that's really necessary and a requirement. And I think it's just the way we present it, the way we talk to folks about it, that, it can be more of a pleasurable experience or provide less friction to the merchant if we're up to speed on everything that it is. So first, PCI data security standards or PCI DSS is really what we're talking about. And what it applies to is any entity that stores, processes, or transmits payment card account data, which typically is merchants, acquiring banks, card issuers, payment processors, even service providers. But more specifically, all merchants that store, process, or transmit cardholder data must be PCI compliant. Now, it originated back, I guess now about 12, 13 years ago by the card brands. Uh, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover, JCB, they were the initial folks on what was called at the time the Payment Card Industry Standards Security Standards Council. So PCI SSC. We all love these acronyms in the industry, but they were primarily focused on providing a more prescriptive approach to compliance than any other standards that were at the time. So um, the reason why the PCI Security Standards Council, SSC, exists was at the time for a variety of reasons. More so was to try to create these standards to educate the payment industry on what the security best practices are. But as we all can see over the last many years, it's really uh, even more important because we're all seeing all of these evolving threats and the emerging threats, all of the breaches that we're hearing about, and those are only the big breaches. What we don't hear about is the majority of the breaches out there are to small, medium-sized businesses. It just doesn't hit the media stream like some of the large breaches do. So we had to really focus more on security and PCI standards over the last 5, 6 years, even after COVID, to combat even more bad actors that were coming into the marketplace. And ultimately, we did this too, the Security Standards Council, really proposed these standards to make sure that we could prevent regulatory outreach from coming into the industry and showing, the regulatory bodies that we were able to govern ourselves to make sure that we could get a more secure environment for all involved in the payment space. So I guess, Scott, I'll stop there for a minute, but I know you wanted to say, I guess, why is there so much disenchantment over PCI?
yeah,
We all hear that merchants, even sales folks, everybody hates it. And I don't really think that, I don't think from a merchant standpoint, they necessarily hate it, but they view it as something outside of what they're normally doing to grow and manage their business. I think in properly discussing it with the merchant, it's a requirement of taking credit cards for payment. So it's integral that they comply and create that more secure environment for all merchants out there, as well as for all the cardholders, all the customers. And I think in the same vein, sales folks may see it the same way too. It takes me away from growing my sales, but I think a lot of times they also think, oh, I need to to cover or to help them and get involved in this. And it's really something that, um, that they shouldn't feel that they need to be part of because that's where we fit in. As long as that PCI tool that they're using has the level of support like ours does, I think they can feel more secure that they can indicate to the merchants, hey, this is where you need to go. This is the phone number you need to call. They'll walk you through everything. They'll make this experience a nice experience for you so that then you can get on with your running of your business.
Yeah. And Mark, a couple of things that I wrote down here where you were just going through that. For the most part, you are correct. When it comes to, something on a national level, those chain stores. I mean, we've heard some of the stories previously where it was like, it happened at Home Depot or it happened at Target. Those are
Yep.
always front and center, like right in the newspaper. But to your point, you were saying that, one of the reasons why PCI kind of came about was looking out for more of the mom and pops, the small to medium sized businesses. Now, to your point, when a breach happens to mom and pop on Main Street, does it make national news? No, it doesn't.
No.
But, and this is one of the things that I want to point out to our audience, to you, the sales agent, when I stop and I think about when a breach happens at, that mom and pop store that everybody loves right there on Main Street, what winds up happening? Word of mouth gets out. And I got to tell you right now, when word of mouth gets out, what's the old saying that when people have something good to say about a business, usually it just kind of trickles, and everything else. But then when something bad happens to a business, people can't wait to get that news right out there. Oh my God, did you hear that there was a breach over there at, the sub shop down the street? To which now, not only does it impact the merchant, because now the merchant, is kind of getting a little bit of bad publicity just because of one breach. But what winds up happening is now less and less people are going to visit that business, all because word of mouth got out so quickly. And not only does that impact the merchant, but sales agent, I'm looking right at you. It impacts you too, because if they're not making the money, guess what? You're probably not going to be making the money as well either. So for the most part, it is quite possibly one of the most important things for those small to medium-sized businesses. One of the other things that I wrote down too, Mark, and you can just kind of back me up on this. I think one of the reasons why there's always been so much disenchantment, albeit from, you said the sales agent, where they're like, oh my gosh, now I got to stop my productivity to go to help this merchant to get their PCI set up. But historically, I can say it, I know that my colleague here, Mr. Marshall, could say it as well, perception. The perception has always
Yeah.
been this is such a cumbersome process. Now we have to sit down and we have to, fill out all of this information. And now we got to do the scans. And now the scans, are they quarterly? Are they yearly? I mean, John, you used to be a business owner too, and you used to sell merchant services. What was some of the feedback in regards to PCI compliance and why sometimes kind of people look at it in like the negative light? John, what would you say?
Well, I think you struck it on the head. It's a burden to agents. And sometimes merchants just would rather, take the non-compliance fee than actually face the horror of going through compliance. And Mark, I'm going to throw it back at you with that because last week when we were talking, you said something about rewording the questions so they read like they were in English.
Yeah.
One of my problems with the old PCI is it was written by some engineer, and I often didn't even know what they were asking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly.
So
I think
tell me about how has your solution addressed that head on, and maybe just give us a walkthrough of that process and how you've streamlined it and removed a lot of those friction points that we all knew before.
Yeah, I'll draw upon that when we do the demo a little later, but I think that what we've tried to do is simplify the process, make it very intuitive, so that even if they don't want to call support, they can walk through it fairly easily. And although the questions, some of them may not sound that good, there is the capability right next to it for them to you in plain English see what and understand more of what that question's really asking. So also too, it's combined with the support mechanism as well. I think, from a sales agent standpoint, they need to bring these things up that there could be a result from PCI if they're not compliant. that they could, there could be a breach, and not only the financial ramifications of that, but what Scott was talking about, the reputational damage is hard to quantify, but sometimes it's even more so than the financial. So I think that not only focused on that, but indicating to them to, hey, call support, call to get the help, have them walk through it with you, because even from a support standpoint, we can make it even simpler. We've been approved by the council to even further reduce down the questions and the ease in which we can allow them to understand what those mean and to actually get to compliance much quicker than they could ultimately do on their own.
And Mark, let me ask a follow-up question. You talked about, breach financial implications. Are there any industry averages or standards of what a breach might cost the average small merchant?
Yeah, today it's about probably $85,000. That's why, in addition to the PCI tool that you guys are rolling out, you've also bundled in with it the breach insurance, or what we refer to as the merchant cyber liability and data breach protection. And that provides up to $100,000 worth of coverage to go towards the mandatory forensic investigation, all the fees and fines that the card brands, impose upon the merchant. This is regardless of whether they're compliant or not, but those fees could be a lot higher if they're not compliant. But it'll also pay for any breach notification services, any hardware replacement or software replacement, if that was the reason for the breach as well. So more than enough to cover, but those breaches are getting more and more expensive as now there are new standards coming out for e-commerce merchants and other merchants that will only keep increasing fines over the years to come.
So you called this insurance, I think. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
So I'm just thinking about small businesses, right? We have to have, in liability insurance on our businesses. We need fire insurance on our premises, and we pay real money for that insurance protection. And you're saying this is included simply by following through on this simplified PCI compliance process. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, yes and no. So it is provided you are bundling this with the PCI tool. Now, merchants, some, like you were saying earlier, hey, I'm dreading even doing this. I've heard from others it's going to take a long time, which maybe it won't. Sometimes folks can get done in between 6 and 15 minutes, but oh my gosh, I'll just pay that non-compliance fee. So even if they're not compliant, if they've had a breach, you've bundled this in for everybody. So you've actually protected their business essentially by bundling this in, whether they do PCI or not. They will be covered for that breach and all of the claims associated with that, should that be a suspected or actual breach. And I call it insurance because the merchants actually are in what's called a risk purchase group. So they're not getting that insurance necessarily from a period compliance or from PayCompass. They're part of a risk purchase group, which is recognized nationally and by all the states, which is the vehicle for the insurance company to pay out the claims.
So just to clarify, and you said this a moment ago, even though you get that 100,000, whether you're in compliance or not, you said the fines and fees can be higher if you're found non-compliant than if you are compliant. Is that correct?
So that's always the additional, education that I provide the merchant that, hey, if you feel like it's going to take a long time, call these people, call the support number that's in the portal, let them walk you through this process and get you to that. Because ultimately, about a year ago, there were new standards that came out for e-commerce merchants. In addition to PCI, they also have a component by the standard 6.4.3 and 11.6.1 that they must now monitor their payment page scripts and their website for malicious code. Well, at the same time, right before this came out, Visa and MasterCard came out with their fine structure to now where they increase their fines for level 3 merchants or e-commerce merchants. If this would happen, those fines were being increased from $5,000 or $10,000 to $25,000 or above. So there's a lot of this stuff that, again, can really bite that merchant ultimately, and not to scare anyone, but it's not the situation of if. A lot of times it's kind of when that breach may occur, and that's sad to be out there, but a lot of the bad actors out there seem to always be maybe one step ahead.
So just to reiterate one last time, if I am PCI compliant, generally speaking, my fines are likely going to be reduced compared to if I am just non-compliant. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, in the industry, because we know that there's no absolutes, but we always say, and we've seen over time that those fines can definitely may be more increased by being in a non-compliant situation than a compliant situation.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I want to do very quickly, just because one of my favorite sales agents is keeping me honest. I saw she put a comment in the chat, and she's like, Scott, you're sitting here introducing this guy named Mark, but we don't know anything about Mark. And Carol had put in the chat, where is Mark from? So agents, let me get you up to speed with this new PCI platform that we're rolling out. Who is Mark? Who does he represent? How are we going to be doing this moving forward? All right, so Mark Hayward is actually from a company called Aperia. Now, for the most part, if that helps you, fantastic. But one of the things that I do want to share with you is that moving forward, this is going to be listed as PayCompass PCI. Okay? So you, the sales agent, in your talk tracks, you're not even going to be talking about the company that Mark represents. However, you are going to have an opportunity to say, well, you know what? Based on my conversation with you, it sounds like when you went through that PCI process previously with your current provider, it sounded like it was pretty cumbersome. Now, this is the one piece where I want to give all of you the assurance that when Mark does his demo here in a little bit, you're going to be like, oh my God, this is dummy proof. There is no way in heck that anybody can mess this up. So when Mark was saying to you that this is pretty much intuitive and gives you an opportunity to just kind of self-guide to get the PCI all wrapped up, when we do the demonstration a little bit later on, trust me, you're going to be like, oh, heck yeah, PayCompass, way to go. We're doing this the right way. Now, another thing that I want to share very quickly with you, everybody, and Mark, we're going to tie this into the conversation here. I don't want anybody on this call to think, hey, everybody, we got a brand new PCI partnership and we're going to give you news soon and we're going to roll it out and gosh, I hope it works. Nope. Okay, so if you notice, towards the very beginning of the call, I said that John and I sat down and we had dinner with Mark in Boston earlier this year. We have been having this conversation with Mark and his team for months now. So I want all of you to know, when we talk about the rollout, this isn't be like, oh, wee, boy, I hope it works, because we've already started rolling this out. Mark, this is where I'm going to kick it over to you. You have been working with our support team, to which, and I've got it documented right here, we started rolling out pilot locations over the past couple of months, 6 months, 8 months. I don't know how long we've been doing the pilot program, but we've already got 120 merchants boarded. Mark, talk about that experience so far.
Yeah, so actually it wasn't that long ago, but about a month ago, we did roll out to those initial 80 to 120 merchants that were boarded onto the system. We went through a very quick implementation because of period compliance. We have over 200 customers or clients today, and we manage over about close to 4 million merchants that are in the program. So although we're delivering this white labeled PCI management tool that's branded under PayCompass, that's how we brand it under all of our other clients as well. So this is a regular routine type way to roll it out. But again, you guys have different nuances within that program as well. But you were flexible in terms of how you roll out the tool, so that you become as comfortable with it as possible. We're also doing it in that way because Jathan and the team are also going to be working on additional functionality that we have, make sure that they roll it out as quick as possible to even better that merchant experience. There are ways inside the tool that the merchant can very quickly get into the right SAQ. But if you take it to the next level, they can be put into a self-assessment questionnaire that you guys have pre-populated certain questions of too, that some of which might cause a stumble for the merchant if they would not really know or understand that question. You can pre-populate certain things so that now there's even less questions for the merchant to go through, so their experience is even quicker to get to compliance.
And,
All
and
right.
Mark, that would probably be dependent on the choice of hardware that the merchant is using.
Could be hardware, gateway, whether it's a point-to-point encryption solution or whatever. So again, it reduces the capability of somebody being put into the wrong SAQ. Then again, we handle that a lot from a support standpoint, where somebody gets confused, they call in, and we're able to put them on to the correct one. But this one, if the more and more you roll out different solutions with different components, then it may be easier to lump somebody into what we call this product code, to where it's easy for them to initially gain compliance and to continue to renew that each year.
And
Gotcha.
Mark,
And
I was
just,
going to say,
okay,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
John.
No, I was
Oh,
going to
rock,
say,
paper, scissors. Go ahead.
yeah, Mark, you were talking about reaching out to support. What do you have different modes? I mean, do you have built-in chat support, email, phone? What are the different ways that a merchant or an agent helping their merchant can reach out to support?
Yes, John, all three actually. So when they're in the portal, there is as well as in all the communications that go out. So as soon as a merchant is boarded, we've got this robust email notification and communication system. And there's over 35 templated emails that will go out throughout kind of the history of them going through to achieve compliance, as well as renewing compliance every year. So depending upon their status, they'll get a specific email that instructs them on what to do next. And in that, there will be the communication about calling into our compliance center help desk. And so that 800 number is specific just to PayCompass merchants. So we also provide to PayCompass as a corporate wide every month of how many calls we get, as well as how many emails, how many instant online chats as well. So all three of those, they can click on the button inside the portal to start chatting with a live agent, as well as they also can send email communications. We prefer a lot of times, even on an instant chat, we'll get that person or that merchant to call in, because it's better to take care of that. But if they call in, we'll actually take care of clicking or doing the mouse clicks, but asking questions, to which, in a 100 question SAQC, for instance, um, we can ask 6 questions of the merchant on the phone and actually click on all of the answers for them, because we're recording all of those phone calls as well. So we're hearing them respond in the positive to those questions. So we can go ahead and do the mouse clicks for them and get them through that process a lot quicker than they might otherwise do. So those levels of support, again, that's really what I communicate. I do webinars for lots of sales organizations and agents. And again, the biggest thing is, you don't need to do this for them, but keep focusing them on the ways they can call to get help and go through, because then they'll have a better experience with this whole PCI and actually not be scared to do it. And it never fails. We get, you were saying earlier about, sometimes you only hear the negative, not the positive, but we get a lot of positive comments and emails sent to our compliance center help desk on how great the experience was, but also that, how quick it was, and that they shouldn't have been worried. They just had this stigma all along that that they would
let me
just
pick up
accept the
on
non-compliance fee.
let me pick up on something you just said a moment ago, and this is one of the things I think got Scott and I so excited. And you mentioned annual recertification.
Yep.
And I think last week, if I recall correctly, you mentioned something like, has anything changed since last year? Yes or no? And sometimes if the answer is no, that's it.
Yeah, that yearly SAQ reassessment, recertification can be as simple as a two-step process. Because once you say nothing's changed, it goes ahead and completes that same SAQ again on the next screen and allows them to attest to it. But also, as well as something has changed, there are a certain question stream that they will get. And it's not like if they need to go into another SAQ that they have to start from ground zero, but they could go into it with pre-populated questions already there, but just answer what is unique or different in that next SAQ. We've also, over time, and I know this is probably more than people care to know too, but a lot of times the merchant will process in a variety of ways. And instead of getting into an SAQ-B or a BIP or a C because it can go across all of it, they'll be put into an SAQD. And I know people scream and yell, uh-oh, what do you mean? That's the worst one we've heard. But it will go into a D, a hybrid D, that actually grays out a lot of the sections for them. But it's just the best way to put them into something to combine those SAQs together. So again, we try to present it in a way that provides less friction for the merchant.
And very quickly here, Mark, this is one key piece that I want to make sure it doesn't get lost in the messaging because we've covered so much so quickly within the first 30 minutes. Let's revisit something that you said. I want to make sure that we're clear on this one because I think this is the piece that would help agents to get excited about this. Something to the effect of our sales agents would have the ability to kind of like pre-qualify the business, submit information on their behalf. So this way it makes that PCI process a little bit easier, correct?
I think in working with PayCompass Corporate, I mean, I think they can probably, provide some understandings of
Yep.
things. And I think you guys can work through that together. Right now, it's kind of at the PayCompass Corporate area in terms of coming up with those product code type things that will help to pre-populate. But I think as more and more of the program is rolled out this year, I think there'll be, there's constant enhancements that you can make because that self-governance of the portal is available for PayCompass Corporate.
Yeah. And just a couple of the key bullets. And a matter of fact, Mark, this is probably a good opportunity for you to start getting ready to share your screen so you can just kind of
Yeah.
get things pulled up, show everybody the ease of use. But a couple of quick bullets that I just want to put out here to everybody that's on this call right now. Mark, you had shared with us that 61% of the folks that you have worked with thus far, out of the 120 merchants that we've on board already, 61% became compliant during the first initial support call, correct?
Actually, they not necessarily true. What I was referring to on the 61%. So today, 61% of all first-time callers that
That's
call
what it
into
was.
our compliance or help desk get off the phone after between 6 to 15 minutes, because our average is about 7, 8 minutes on the phone with a merchant. We don't just answer a question, get them off the phone. We answer a question and we say, hey, let's stay on here. Let's go through the process. So by the time they get off those first time callers, over 61% of those actually result in them being compliant when they get off the phone with us. So
That's what it was.
that's the reason why the sales agents can feel comfortable. Please, have them call. This is the person to help. While I'm not here or we're gone or whatever, call the help desk. That's what they're there for. They'll make it easy for you to do that. So far within your portfolio, when we turned it on the first day, there were 5 merchants that called in already and they became compliant that day.
Yeah. Another key piece too,
I wish
Scott,
it was 61% already, Scott, but that's all right. It's only been a few weeks. We're good.
yeah. And even then too, I mean, just It's been such a blur since we met with you last week. We threw the notes together in preparation for this one today. So I just wanted to make sure that we did hit upon that. Now, you, the sales agent, you know you love all of our folks that work out of that Tempe office. They take very good care of you. They take very good care of all of your merchants. So one other thing that I want to share with you, the sales agent, just to kind of solidify that things are going to be okay as we roll forward with this new PCI program. Right over here, got it right up on my screen. The onboarding is actively managed by Jathan's team, handling merchant registrations and handling the questionnaires. So this isn't one of those things where we're kind of going into it going, oh, hey, we kind of hope this partnership's going to work. This is one of those things where we're rolling into it, and all of our folks in the Tempe office are actively understanding how do we make this process work better. So kudos to Jathan Bennett and his entire team, because they, once again, they haven't left your merchant behind. They've been actively working with them when it comes to that registration process and when it comes to assisting with the questionnaires. Given the fact that we are here at the bottom of the hour, you, the sales agent, questions. What have you got before Mark provides a demonstration to show you the ease of use with the platform? Come off mute, or you can throw your questions right into the chat. What have we got?
God, if you read this question that Stephen presented and get Mark's opinion on how that would be handled.
Is it will this work on all of our current banking platforms? Is that the question?
No, I'll read it. So it says if the merchant is not using a POS like Aloha, they're not going to be required to perform quarterly network security scans. That's a question. So back to you, Mark. We haven't talked about scans. Are they required if you're just using a side terminal or a POS only or all the above?
But it depends primarily because the scanning is an external vulnerability scanning of either an IP address and or a website domain. So with the POS, if that POS is connected to an IP, then that would require a scan, or perhaps it would require a scan. They just have to go through the SAQ wizard and it would identify if it should be properly in a BIP or an SAQB, for instance. But the scanning process is, again, of an IP address. That's why if you have normally a terminal, if you're not linking that terminal to a dial-up, if it's more to an IP address or you've got it into the public-facing internet connection, then that's where those scans would be required.
Does that help, Stephen?
I was going to say
yes and no. Here's what I'm asking. In an expansion of that question, Mark.
Yeah.
Where we've got merchants where we're using a terminal that's connected to the internet via the IP. It's strictly, that's the only connection there is. It's not shared. They don't have a website. With other vendors that I'm actually starting to move them over to here, but other vendors do not have to do this quarterly scan that we currently do with PayCompass. And it's just once a year. If anything's changed, we go in and they update it, sign it, and it's done. But right now, all of our merchants have to do these quarterly scans, whether they're using Aloha or whatever POS system, or if they're using a standalone terminal like Valor or whatever, a Deja Vu.
And Mark, maybe this is a good time to talk about your pre-scheduled scans that can automatically trigger to relieve that pain point.
Yeah, so inside the tool for a scan, there's a scan scheduler so that the merchant doesn't have to keep going in every quarter. It will pre-run, and if it actually goes through and passes, they don't have to do anything beyond that. They'll just be notified that they've passed again through those outbound communications. I guess, Stephen, so today you're required to do the quarterly scans, or they're not
Yes.
required, you've exempted them from the scans?
Well, because of their risk level, like a restaurant who doesn't have it online. It basically, it's your sit down, you go in and sit down. They do not have to do a quarterly scan. with some of my other vendors, but the ones that I have with PayCompass, or it's like they're on TSYS or whatever platform they have them on, they have to do the quarterly scan, but they're not doing POS online.
Okay, so these merchants aren't necessarily in our system yet, but you're just saying some of them where you have them have scans and some have essentially exempted them. I guess
Yeah,
what I,
for
yeah,
example, Clarent Explorer.
yeah,
I had a restaurant, or an Irish pub restaurant. They had to do a scan um, every quarter because the POS system they were using is online. But the Chinese takeout delivery restaurant who was just using their Deja Vu didn't have to do those quarterly scans.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, for Deja Vu, if it was a point-to-point encryption, then they're in a point-to-point encryption SAQ and non-scanning. I guess we could take this offline because it may be a little more to go through, but I'm happy to have the discussion.
Sounds good.
Because I'm familiar with what you're talking about with Clearant, because they are using our tool as well. So again, there's a number of ways we could go down this. Ultimately, you and PayCompass can decide what you would want to do, and there is capabilities to exempt certain merchants from scanning as well. So I don't necessarily think we need to go that far because depending upon how they're doing things, they may be put into an SAQ that doesn't require scanning, and
So you
some do
just said that
because of.
you guys, I apologize for interrupting. So you guys do the PCI for Explorer.
Yes.
I'm cool because I understand it because that's who I
Okay.
was talking about.
Okay.
They don't have to do those security scans based on off of their SAQ.
So yeah, so based upon their product code or whatever, with what
Yes.
you were talking about, that's why I know, for instance, for Deja Vu, it's in a point-to-point encryption. So it puts them into different SAQs that may alleviate that scanning requirement. And I would not normally talk about anybody else, but I'm glad I said it if you're good with it.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, this is a good program, guys.
Yeah.
Excellent. All
All
right.
right, Steve. I didn't pay you for that either.
And neither did I, just to be clear. I don't do that. I am quite possibly one of the most upstanding citizens on this call. Maybe, kind of, sort
No,
of.
it's
Check.
the service is great because I can help my client remotely, and then I follow up with requesting, hey, who do you know that I can help, etc. It's a great referral program just based off of that.
Yeah. And I think
Great.
this is a good time for Mark. Go ahead and get your screen pulled up. Let's do a little bit
Yep.
of show and tell. Mark, I'm going to throw one question over to you, and then I really want you to dive into the show and tell while we still have 15 minutes left. So the question is, so with your program, with your platform, the business owner does not have to attest if they have passed the scan in order to become compliant. Yes or no?
They have to attest initially, yes,
Okay.
to the initial, not necessarily other subsequent scans. There were some changes in the I'm drawing a blank here, in the scanning guidelines a couple of years back, and then they've modified some things since.
Yeah. Okay. All right, everybody. Ease of use, intuitive. Mark, take it away. We got about 15 minutes left. This is the part where everybody gravitate towards what Mark's going to show you. Take it away, my man.
All right, so I was telling you all just a little earlier about the email notifications, the merchant communication process. So there's over 35 templates that are have been modified or edited to reflect, just like the white label portal, that white labeling on all of the communications as well. And there's a specific frequency that's been set up too. So I set this merchant up. They were boarded this morning. I got this email that indicated why PCI is important. This is the 800 number that they can call to get help. This is where they can click on to go to the URL. This is how they type in their username and password, their first time credentials, and thank you for contributing a more secure payment card acceptance environment. As I go online and do things whenever I sign off, depending upon what status I'm in, if I've done everything, but but done my final attestation, I get an email that says all you got to do is go back in and sign, and here are the instructions. So these emails are constantly communicated to the merchant, but also to, they really do work. Folks will see these, have that familiarity, and be able to go in and get through the process quicker, or at least attempt to call us and to get that associated help. When I click on the URL link, this is where the merchant can go on, and based upon what I was mentioning before, that credentialing structure, they can go ahead and put that in. And when they get online, the first screen will allow them to put in the old password or what they just used to get in, but also create something a little more memorable for them so they'll know on subsequent visits. They can also answer one of 4 security questions, because at the very opening, if they forgot their password, they can go ahead and click on that, or from the emails, they can call us and have us reset their password. Again, everything is white labeled to you. As Scott was saying, a period compliance. You don't need to necessarily remember who we are. The only time a merchant might ever hear of a period compliance would be if they look at a scanning report, because we are the approved scanning vendor. So on that scanning report, it has to identify our name on it, as well as at the very end, if they, other than the attestation document or the question and answer sheet or the vulnerability details report, they can print out a certificate, put it up at their place of business, in a frame or whatever, and that would have PayCompass's name, their name on it, the PCI, DSS, and Security Standards Council, as well as our emblem or our logo on that as well. When they come on, again, if they don't have any previous compliance, they'll be able to see here on the front screen why it matters. And I was mentioning earlier about the intuitiveness. There's blue buttons on here that if you saw the full screen, it kind of would move their eyes toward it, so they know what they have to do is get started. But just real quickly on this landing screen, I talked about you bundling in that data breach protection, the cyber liability and data breach insurance, and that has the information on this screen that they can understand what it is that they are being provided, as well as a process should something happen as to how they access that coverage. Up at the top, along the top, they'll have the Contact Us button, which will show the actual email communication link to get support, as well as that special 800 number specific to PayCompass merchants, as well as the instant online chat that will actually bring a merchant on and they can chat with the merchant to assist them in the process. They'll have the identification of that merchant's name up at the top on the right, as well as this is not only does support provided in multi languages, but the portal as well can reflect um, you know additional languages as well. So a merchant could change from English to Mandarin Chinese or French or German or Greek or French Canadian, whatever they want here, to where not only will the SAQ itself be translated into that language, but every screen they see will be in that language as well. So as I get started, this is where I talked about before, the SAQ wizard. Basically on a screen from top to bottom, they're going to confirm their information and ask a few preliminary questions as to what type of business they are. And as they move down the screen, identify what type of relationships they have. And when I was mentioning earlier about, I don't understand what this question means, every question within the SAQ, as well as throughout the portal, will provide this button here for them to hover over and have a better explanation of what it is that that question is really asking. When they get to the processing solution, again, they can choose multiple, but they just identify how they are processing credit cards. Again, our folks can even help through this process and asking questions to help get them into the right SAQ. But there'll always be questions that appear on the screen after they've made their selection to then further identify whether they store information, whether they use network segmentation in the business, as well as to identify the solution. Now, we have put online and update daily everything that is approved by the PCI Council as well as on the Visa registered list. So any certified application, point of sale tool, point-to-point encryption solution, anything and everything. So depending upon whatever they choose, they'll get perhaps a different drop down, but allow it to make it easier for them if they understand who they're using or what terminal or point of sale system, they can actually choose from the drop downs. If they don't want to or can't find it, they can just type in something manual. There is nothing that will prevent them from moving on because we don't know what machine they're using either. So depending upon what they put in here, they'll still be able to go through. They're not going to be stopped. But again, most merchants, you'll be surprised, they try to put in whatever they can to provide whatever they are using. And then down here at the end, they just simply connect. Hold on. Simply read and agree to the conditions, and then they'll get that eligibility screen. For instance, on this one, it'll come up and it indicates, hey, you're eligible to take a point-to-point encryption questionnaire. They can continue on from there, and now they're presented with the questionnaire. They simply, again, with the blue button, start the questionnaire, and then they can go in section by section. They can look at all of them and click on each section. But when there is no scan required, like this particular SAQ, we've taken the questions, there's about 28 questions here, and we've changed them into statements. And we've actually combined them so that it's even quicker for the merchant to attest to each section and therefore complete that process if indeed they can attest to those things that they're doing. And again, I think a lot of this is not only attesting that they're doing these things, but part of this is also just education of when you encounter these are the things, these are the policies, this is how you need to approach things in terms of accepting credit cards and keeping things confidential. Once I complete that, I continue and I get to the fifth and final stage, which is review and sign. So basically, they go down and see everything that they answered and did so far. If they missed a question, they can edit that question, or they can answer the question that they missed and not lose their place in the process. And finally, get to the point here where they can electronically attest. It takes just a few seconds for their reports to generate, and then they'll see these reports on the screen where they can view, they can email to anybody, whatever they need to do. But when they're answering an SAQ, they'll get the question and answer sheet as well as the attestation document, which is really the most important, but also the certificate if they wish to show that at their business. For those e-commerce merchants, once they become compliant, they can actually get a free site seal to put on their privacy page, home page, and e-commerce page if they wish. Now, as we talked about before, basically all throughout this, I'm going to get an email, and probably I've already received it, that indicates congratulations, you're compliant. We'll let you know the next year. We'll communicate ahead of time when it's time to renew. So I just wanted to point out with regards to a renewal or reassess, when they get that document 11 months from now, it'll indicate to go into the first screen into the summary and reassess. And just as John and Scott were talking about earlier, they answer the question if their environment or processes have changed. If they have not, they save and continue. It basically re-answers everything for them. to where they're already in a pass. And now they do the same thing to go down through that previous process for the following year and just to go ahead and reattest. And now they're all set. So that process is made very simple for them moving forward, but they will have, and nothing is ever purged in the system. They will have not only those documents for that year, but every previous year, as well as whenever they do a scan, every previous scan, all the reports are all on here and available at their fingertips.
All right. Now, to you, the sales agent, like I said, John and I nerded out over this last week, just in regards to the ease of use, the clarity with the language. This is going to remove a lot of friction in regards to what you and your merchants may have gone through previously when it comes to being PCI compliant. Mark, the one thing that we did not share with this audience is talking about what you can provide in regards to liability. And I've got it documented right here, up to $100,000 of cyber liability and data protection insurance. Would you mind just kind of speaking to that to our audience so they have an understanding of what's in it for the merchant?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about it on some of the previous questions, but overall, they're provided with coverage for a suspected or actual breach of not only cardholder data, but any personal information, PII, or any privacy data. So it's truly a cyber liability type policy. They can look and see there's frequently asked questions and the coverage is available, but it's $100,000 or up to $100,000 worth of coverage that goes ahead and pays for the mandatory forensic investigation that follows a suspected or actual breach, all the breach notification costs, because there's a law firm that actually does all of that for them, uh, all of the fines and fees that are assessed by the card brands, and if there's any required hardware replacement costs or software replacement costs to go ahead, if that was the reason for also the breach, that will be provided for the merchant. So again, up to $100,000 of coverage per incident per year. Of course, once they become or have had a breach, they need to go ahead and retain compliance after that. But like I said before, there is no prerequisite to be covered under that coverage. As long as they're a level 2, 3, or 4 merchant, whether they've ever signed in or not, or if they're compliant or whatever, doesn't matter. They don't necessarily need to be compliant at the time of the breach. They will still be covered. And Scott, I just popped onto this too for this additional merchant that I created. I know we only have a minute or two. I just wanted to point out that there is a button to go in to do the scans to allow the people to add their scan targets. So again, the blue will take them through, but also what's nice about our tool is it detects where they're accessing the portal and that IP address. So if it is the same IP address as it says here, that they process credit card transactions, we make it even simpler for them to identify that IP and essentially go in here to launch a scan. I know we're running late, so I just wanted to show that the same process for the SAQ is there available for the scan in the tool, and whenever they pop into the
Mark,
portal, it will
well,
provide that
Mark,
guidance.
while you're here, can you just point out where that scheduling of the quarterly scans might be conducted?
Yeah. Yeah, let me just go ahead very quickly. I will copy and paste that since that's where I'm coming in from. And I add the domain or my target or my IP address. The merchant confirms there's permission to launch the scan, and the external vulnerability scan is about a second at most, so it doesn't interfere with anything. They return to the network scan summary to see the target, and before they launch the scan or any time after, they can create a schedule. For their targets, they can scan as much as they want. There is no additional costs to anything. Yes, the requirement is every quarter they have to do a scan, but a scan will be launched every week, every month. It doesn't matter. And there are some merchants that like that because they want to see what's going on more frequently, just a quarter. But whenever they identify, it shows them the next 5 on the screen here, but it's automatically set up until they stop the schedule. So once they submit that schedule, they launch the scan initially here. So as they go through here and they complete the scan and go through and attest to that, and they can sit here and see when it goes to the certain sections here regarding of whatever they do, pass, expired, or scan on this first one. They'll go down and see whatever action here and go ahead and get themselves to a passing scan status so that they can attest to the scan just like they did to the SAQ.
And just to reiterate, you said they have to attest to the first scan, but all subsequent scans, they are not required to reattest to.
All subsequent scans, I believe, from a passing standpoint, don't require them to go back in.
Perfect.
But they will get a communication if they do have to with regards to anything that may have changed. There are some situations where they come up with an inconclusive scan. They just have to answer a few questions, but that may require them to go back in if the scanner did not identify the target.
Perfect.
And that would identify too if that target may have changed. And therefore, if that's the case, then they go in and they have to redo based upon a different target. And some folks have dynamic IPs instead of static IPs, so that could be a reason for them having to go back in to reset up a new scan.
Awesome.
Yep. Excellent.
Okay.
All right. To you, the sales agent. What questions do you have? Because we're getting ready to wrap up this call here. For the most part, ease of use. For the most part, we're already actively working on it. We've already launched a pilot program. 120 merchants got signed up. So not only the ease of use, the ability to schedule whenever they need to, taking away some of that friction in regards to filling out the initial questionnaires and getting everything submitted. I'm telling you right now, folks, this is some really good stuff that's going to be coming very, very soon. Today, this was a sneak preview. Watch for upcoming Coffee with Closers. Watch for upcoming Daily Bearings. That's going to provide more information. But before we wrap, this is about you. It's not about us. We've already nerded out over it. Thank you very much. What other questions do you have before we wrap? Once. All twice. All right, if that's the case, then we're going to wrap it up. I did get a question that kind of came to me like via private message. What is the cost on this? Now, friends, given the fact that we're recording this, we're going to put it out there on YouTube. We kind of want to make sure that before we quote anything, we want to make sure that everything is finalized. So with that said, when it comes to the cost of the program and everything else, that's where I'm going to reiterate. Watch for upcoming Coffee with Closers. Watch for upcoming Daily Bearings with everything spread out. For the most part, could I quote it on this call right now? Yes, I could. But between this phone call and the time that we officially launch it, some of the nuances could change in regards to the pricing, and I don't want that recorded for posterity to come back and haunt me later on. So be patient. Know that it's coming very soon. Today was all a big sneak peek. One last time, I'm going to throw it out to you, the sales agent. What questions do you have before we wrap? We'll take questions, comments, and snide remarks. Anything.
Hey, Scott. Hey, I'm very familiar with this service, so this is what we've needed, what most of the agents have been asking for. So, yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Glad it made your day. To you, the sales agent, I hope it made your day too. And gosh, a lot of good stuff coming out here. Let's give some love to our guest panelist who joined us today, Mark Hayward. Mark, domo arigato, my man. Thank you so much for joining us on this call today. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And another very quick sneak peek, and then I'm going to let you go and tell you to get off my lawn. This is not the last time that we're going to hear from Mark. Mark has other offerings that we're exploring, thinking
Yeah.
about for future conversations with you, the sales agent. But until we meet again, reach out if you need any assistance with anything. For the most part, we can't help if we don't know where it hurts. And make sure you join us next week for Toolbox Tuesday on July 21st. We're going to teach you how to build your Square demo account. So until we meet again, thank you so much for joining us every single Tuesday. We love having you on these calls, and let us know what you need so that we can help you get your deals over the finish line. Take care, everybody. Rock on.